Background. This happened a week before school. I live in the city of Prague, Czech Republic. I'm 15 years old and I really enjoy building and collecting Lego Star Wars. I was born in Southern California, so I have a bit of a tan. That day, I just finished getting my passport renewed in the U.S. Embassy. I also had to go to the bus station in Hagi, Prague 11, because I was meeting my aunt and her 2 kids who were twins. I still had 45 minutes to get to the bus station. So I decided to get myself, the twins, and my neighbor friends some gifts. The nearest toy store is in Shodov, which was great because Shodov has a metro station, C-Line, which Hagi also had. In the toy store, I was relieved that they still had the Lego I wanted and quickly grabbed it off the shelf and started picking out gifts for the twins. After I paid for the Lego and left the store, a young boy with a Brawl Stars t-shirt comes up to me and asks, "Sir, can I ask where you got that spaceship?" Me. "Sure, it's just a couple stores down in Bamboli. If you know where it is, can you give the spaceship to me and you could just go and get a new one?" "Sorry to let you down, but I'm in a hurry and I use my own money for this, so I can't give to you." The kid then ran in a different direction than the one I showed him to Bambiel. 2 minutes later, I saw the kid and his entitled mother storming towards me. "Sorry to bother you, but you told my angel that he can't have the spaceship." "Yes, I did because..." She cuts me off. "Because what? Because you don't want to contribute to society?" No. I use my own money that I work hard for from being an instructor on a military camp. If you want your child to get the Starfighter, then buy it yourself. You're too old to be buying these toys. Ma'am, there is no age limit on any Lego. The age number on the box is only for skill level. No. You're just a gypsy in word. Yeah, she actually said that. Pervert who steals for a living. You probably cheat on your girlfriend all the time. Funny thing being I don't have a girlfriend, nor would I cheat on one. At this point, I really wanted to punch this female dog, but I managed to suppress my anger. "Ma'am, what part of I bought this with my own money? Do you not understand? What you're doing is illegal, and you can get arrested." "Really? Because this is a capitalist country and not communist." "It hasn't been that way for 22 years. The lady stormed off. I was just about to leave the mall until a security guard shouted at me. I turn around and see a man in black uniform with, you guessed it, the entitled mother and her kid, who was crying. The security guard came up to me and asked, "This woman says that you stole her Lego and punched a little child while getting away. Is that true?" I looked at the child and saw his left cheek is red. "Sir, if you want proof that I didn't steal the Lego, I'll show you the receipt." I start to take my wallet out of my pocket and show it to the security guard when all of a sudden,
"Hey, that's my wallet."
I almost burst into laughter, but I hold it in and say, "Me. Oh, really? If it's your wallet? Then how did the citizenship card magically turn from your card to mine? Why do I have my name on the library card? Why does the health insurance card have my name, but you still hit my child?" At this point, the security guard started to suspect that the woman was lying and that she might even hit her own child to get the guard on her side. The security guard got down to the kid, level, and asked, "Who hit you?" The smirk on the entitled mother's face grew as she thought she won. The kid looked at me, but then pointed at the entitled mother. I can already imagine what went through her brain when he pointed at her. Entitled mother's brain, halo voiceover, betrayal. The entitled mother then took the kid away from the scene and I went on to the metro. Luckily, she was banned from coming back to the mall. I work overnight in my hospital's COVID ICU, intensive care unit, and there's this one patient who is ridiculously entitled. Oh, how he loves to order all of us around, and his favorite trick was to wait until we'd finish whatever we were doing to think of 2 or 3 other things he needed immediately, at which point we'd already doffed our PA, personal protective equipment, and therefore had to leave, and then get pissed off when we didn't turn around and immediately do it without PPA. And you better believe that call light was grafted to his hand. Basically, he's just an all-around attention seeker, as if you can be in the IQ and not get enough attention. Most people beg us to please leave them alone for a little while so they can sleep. But I digress. When he arrived, he was critical enough that we had to intubate him and put him on a ventilator. After 3 days, he'd improved enough to get off the vent and switch to a heated high-flow cannula, which is a good thing where we can gradually ease people down to hopefully just a regular nasal cannula. And also it meant he could eat, so he would call us to get him Jell-O, popsicles, ice water, snacks, etc. at least hourly and often more frequently than that all night long. He didn't even eat all of them. He'd take a couple bites and throw the rest away and want another one 10 minutes later. He just wanted someone to go in and wait on him. This particular night, about 2 weeks after admission, his doctor restricted him to water only until morning because his sugar was running high. This patient did not like this because there went 75% of his means of getting attention, so he decided that taking off his high flow so that his oxygen sats plummeted was a great idea because obviously we respond to those alarms damn quick. After the third or fourth time of him deliberately doing this, I went in and sat down and had a blunt talk with him. I said, I know it's boring in isolation. It sucks that there's no visitors allowed, and yes, the hospital's cable plan leaves much to be desired, but he's hurting himself by doing this, and every time he does it, his oxygen levels take longer to recover. I told him, I get that you don't like being here, and I don't blame you a bit, but you're sabotaging your own recovery and making your stay longer by doing this. You've been improving steadily, and the last thing anyone wants is for you to go back on the vent, so is there anything that I can do to help you relax and get some sleep tonight? He said he supposed he could use his laptop, but he needed reading glasses to see the screen, so if I brought him some, he'd stop taking his oxygen off. I'm sorry, but we don't have disposable reading glasses. I can try to help you increase the text size on your computer, and in the morning, maybe you can have a family member pick up your glasses from home and drop them off for you with security. I told him. The nurse has some out there. Our unit is basically a circle of rooms with the nurse's station in the center where we can see them and vice versa. I'll just use those. Those are her personal glasses, and she needs them. Besides, in isolation rooms, whatever comes into your room has to be disposable or your personal property. Then have the hospital optometrist come in and give me new ones. At this point, it's about midnight. We don't have a hospital optometrist. Seriously, does any hospital anywhere have an on-call optometrist? And even if we did, you're in COVID isolation. Only medically necessary staff are allowed into this unit. Can someone bring you yours? Him, getting mad now, you'll get me an optometrist. I have a caseworker who oversees my care across 3 counties. I'll call her and tell her, and she'll make you bring in someone to give me new reading glasses. The rant went on, but at this point, I'm just done, so I repeat to him that none of this will be happening because you are in COVID isolation, sir, but if you can think of something reasonable that we can do for him, we'll be glad to do it. He's still making demands about glasses, so I leave because we're clearly not getting anywhere, and contrary to his apparent belief, he's not the only patient in the unit. 2 minutes later, his call light goes off. I go see what he needs. He wants the nurse's glasses. Another call light wants glasses. Another call light still wants glasses. Are you kidding me right now? Another call light. At this point, I don't even say, can I help you? I just tell him that it doesn't matter how many times he asks. The nurse is not going to give him her glasses, and he's a grown man who knows better than to behave like this. Our unit is full, and we need to see to everyone's needs, not just his. If he has a real need, we're happy to help him, but he needs to accept that he's not getting the nurse's glasses, so he takes off his oxygen. Now we're playing this game again. I gown up, run in, put it back in his nose, and leave. He waits until I'm outside getting wiped down, and then looks me straight in the eye and pulls it off again. I gown up again, go back in, tell him he has to leave it on, put it back in his nose, leave, and he takes it off again. At this point, I tap out because I'm a patient person, but this is beyond ridiculous, and I'm about to exercise my ex-Navy vocabulary at him, so another nurse takes over. She goes in and tells him that if a patient is a danger to themselves, we have to restrain them, and deliberately removing life-sustaining treatment qualifies as a danger to himself. She tells him she's not as nice as me, so he gets one chance to knock it off. He lets her leave and then takes his oxygen off again, and one thing about this nurse, she doesn't bluff. 5 minutes later, his hands are restrained, which honestly, the reason I put up with his nonsense for so long was because we try our damnedest not to restrain anybody. But at least now he can't take off his oxygen, and maybe I can get some work done. Nope, he's got a new game. Throw a screaming fit. I swear to God, this is a grown man in his 60s screaming that it's not fair. We're all so mean. Why are we doing this to him, etc. It really is a tantrum, and he has no medical excuse to be behaving this way. And now his vitals are all the way screwed up. And he's sure getting all that attention he wanted because now we're all in his room trying to get him to stop before he codes. Night intensivist tells him to stop it now because he's endangering his own life. He screams, then tell that witch to give me her glasses, and then he holds his breath like he's 2 years old. And by this point, he's gotten his heart rate so high and his oxygen so low that we have no choice but to sedate and intubate him and put him back on a ventilator, which he is still on now and may not come off again. All because he didn't get his way. Edit. When I say medical reasons, I mean things like brain injury, developmental disabilities, encephalopathy, dementia, psychiatric disorders, drug withdrawal, ICO delirium, etc. Sometimes people legitimately aren't able to control the way they behave, and it's not their fault. Their actions aren't a choice. They genuinely can't help it. This wasn't that. This was a dude who couldn't fathom not instantly getting everything he wanted. I've written a few stories before about my psychotic mother and how wonderful my mother-in-law is. My ex-husband, Bill, and I have been dealing with quite a lot of stress lately. We took a trip to another state to look at houses and talk with a real estate agent. We finally landed on a place, and we're in the initial stages of purchasing a place. Over the last week, Bill and I have talked at length about our relationship. With all of the therapy we've both been getting and lots of encouragement from my in-laws, we decided to get remarried and start over. We decided on another small ceremony, but this time I let my mother-in-law plan it out, so it's going to be in a church. Luckily, their pastor friend agreed to officiate on short notice. I'm not religious, but my in-laws are totally okay with that, and their only request was for me and Bill to get married in a church. I agreed as it's not that big of a deal to me, but everything to them. So I'm happy to make them happy. You would think that this is where the happy ending part comes, right? Wrong. My mother-in-law's, now former, friend, Karen, that's actually her name and she behaves, looks, and thinks just like a typical Karen would. Oh, just my luck, is throwing fit over the pettiest of reasons. Karen's daughter, Barbara, not real name, is supposed to be getting married that same week and in the same church and can't possibly deal with 2 weddings happening on 2 different days of that week and demanded that Bill and I change the date to 2 months later. By that point, me, Bill, and my son will be in another state in our new house, so this is impossible. Karen is also going crazy over the color scheme. I love red and purple and wanted those colors. Barbara loves red. Barbara couldn't care less that I like the same color as her, and has told me that Karen is a drama queen and tries living vicariously through her own daughter because her own life was not what she had hoped for. Barbara and her own fiancé were not in touch with Karen for many years, but decided to let her back in because they are getting married. Barbara and I discovered that we both like a lot of the same things, so we are friends. Barbara was mostly raised by her grandparents, so she's not entitled like Karen. Thank God. Me and her are friends, and we are having fun comparing things about our up-and-coming weddings, even joked about a double wedding, to which Karen threw a colossal fit over. The last few days have been really stressful, and my father and mother-in-law came to our house crying, saying that she and Karen were no longer on good terms. When I asked why, she told me that while the two of them were discussing some details about the weddings, Karen lost it over the flowers. I wanted red roses and whatever purple flowers. I wasn't picky. The choosing beggar Karen had only paid for half the amount of red roses needed for Barbara's wedding. When she learned I was getting red roses and demanded mother-in-law to give the roses to her and I could just go with something else. Mother-in-law had already laid out a lot for the roses and told Karen no. Karen, of course, lost her mind and accused my mother-in-law of trying to destroy Barbara's big day. My father-in-law tried talking Karen down, but Karen began screaming at him, and he and mother-in-law left. After reading so many posts on here about password protecting my wedding services, I'm glad I had the foresight to do the same. Karen had tried calling the floral company, bakery, and even the church to cancel my wedding twice this week, but didn't know the password. I know it was her because she's the only one that doesn't want me to get married in that church, have those flowers, or even that cake. Because Karen's mouth works before her brain does, she complained to others about not being able to sabotage my wedding. Barbara, of course, found out and finally had enough with Karen's nonsense and took control over everything about her wedding, cutting Karen out of any and all planning. Of course, this sent Karen into a full-blown tirade and she canceled every service she paid for, leaving Barbara and her fiancé, Dave, with nothing for their wedding. After talking with Bill and my in-laws, we invited Barbara and Dave to do that double wedding we had joked about, and the two were ecstatic and accepted. Karen must have expected Barbara to come crawling back with apologies, because she became certifiably insane and threw the world's largest tantrum when she heard about our new plans. We've agreed to rent our house to Barbara and Dave after we move so they can have a nice place to live, and for now we are letting them stay in our guest room while we pack. Karen tried breaking in, and because of previous experiences I dealt with, I have a great security system complete with cameras and a Ring doorbell. Karen has since been ordered to stay away and is only allowed at the wedding as a guest and not part of the wedding party. She blames me and mother-in-law for all of this, and that's just fine with us. I told Karen that if she had relaxed and stopped being crazy, that she would get to be part of all of the fun things with my mother-in-law. Barbara and I, but her behavior has gotten to the point where no one wants anything to do with her. Karen still calls the services, hoping to strike lucky on one canceling, but she can't guess the password, so our wedding is secure. My mother-in-law and I are becoming so close, she wants me to call her mom. Bill and Dave have become friends, and the four of us are making plans for them to come visit us in the fall after we move. My in-laws are also going to spend Christmas and New Year's with us. Bill and I have already decided that we are going to try to have a baby after we are married and settled into our new home. The wedding is next month. Barbara and I have decided to get matching wedding dresses, but one has a purple sash. The other has red, but we are trading shoes. I will have red shoes with the purple sash, and she will have purple shoes with the red sash, as a token of our blossoming friendship. Edit. So me, Barbara, Dave, and Bill are sitting on the couch, eating takeout and watching TV when we heard loud banging on the door. I checked my Ring doorbell camera on my phone, and guess who's out there? Karen. She She's screaming into my doorbell, demanding that Barbara come outside. I just told her that if she doesn't leave, I'm calling the police. Cue the tears and wailing. Karen demanded to know why I was being so mean to her and began pacing back and forth on my porch. By that point, the four of us were watching my phone. The more she paced, the more amped up she was getting. We could hear her talking to herself and getting angrier, until she stopped and grabbed fists full of her own hair and began screaming at my front door. She kicked at it and screamed for Barbara to get outside or she would kill her. So I called the police. Police came and arrested her for trespassing and attempted breaking and entering. Barbara and Dave are now going full no contact again and uninvited Karen to the wedding. This happened less than an hour ago. Bill later declared that he wants Dave and Barbara to come live with us in another state, believing that the four of us should lean on each other more than separate at this time. I know I am safe from my own mother, but Karen isn't in jail. She might be after earlier, but I don't know if she will stay there and could cause some issues at any time. I'm thankful that I gave that man another chance because I cannot imagine a life without him. I can't wait to be his wife again, can't wait to have kids with him, and have a real home with him away from all the insanity in this crazy place. We're also going to be talking to our security team tomorrow about being on their A game in case Karen tries to show up. We're hoping we don't hear anything from her. One more month to go until the wedding. This happened about a week and a half ago. It was a pretty normal Saturday, and I was running errands at the local Mart of Wall store. Part of my honey-do list, you know how it is. I had just finished grabbing a few items when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I was met with a glare from a woman who surprisingly looked nothing like a typical Karen. She was dressed in a pretty plain outfit, something gray if memory serves, long hair and a ponytail. Nothing Karen-ish that I could see. "Excuse me, where can I find the kitchen appliances?" She sounded polite enough, even though she'd started the conversation by touching me, something I'm not a huge fan of. But some people are just touchy. Normally, the presence of my wife keeps strange women from touching me, but she was at home. "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't actually work here," I replied politely, gesturing to my red shirt, which was clearly not the store's traditional blue uniform. But Karen wasn't having it. "Don't give me that nonsense. I saw you stocking shelves earlier. Now, where are the kitchen appliances?" I had not stocked any shelves. I hadn't even put back anything I bought, which I clearly told her. She was having none of it and told me I was a lazy, useless worker. She might even be right, but I wasn't a lazy, useless employee of this store. Wife and I own our own business. You'd have to ask her about my usefulness. I tried to explain once again that I was just another customer, but Karen still wasn't having any of it. With sound like a cat ready to vomit, she stormed off, I assumed to find someone who actually worked there, leaving me feeling confused and slightly annoyed. I shrugged it off and continued with my shopping, hoping to avoid any further encounters with the strange, angry little woman. But she clearly had other plans. As I made my way down the next aisle, Karen reappeared, this time accompanied by a big security guard. I'm a large man, 6 foot and over 250 pounds, but this guy towered over me. She pointed at me accusingly and exclaimed, "That's him! He refused to help me and was incredibly rude." Before I could even speak to defend myself, the security guard grabbed my arm firmly. "You're coming with me to see store manager," leaving his name out since he had no part if this "you can't treat customers like that," he said with the authoritative voice reserved for those without actual authority. I protested what was rapidly devolving into my kidnapping, trying to explain that I didn't work at the store and that Karen had mistaken me for an employee. But the security guard was having none of it. He dragged me towards the front of the store, ignoring my protests. As we reached the checkout area, chaos erupted. Other customers stared in disbelief as I was manhandled by the security guard, all because of a ridiculous misunderstanding. I was shouting to let go of me, that this was illegal. You can't just grab people and drag them wherever you want. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Karen lunged forward and shoved me, and as was my luck of the day, since the guard had my arm, I was already off balance. I tripped over his big feet and was sent sprawling to the ground. Uninjured, but I hopped up fighting mad. Now we were all going to have a bad day? The store manager, who had been alerted to the commotion, arrived on the scene before I could start throwing hands and quickly assess the situation. Karen shouted that I had attacked her in an aisle and that's why I was being arrested, and I threatened her before the manager came out, so she just gave me a little push to keep me away from her. The security guard had let go of me and was looking a little uncomfortable since he just heard her tell 2 lies. He knew it wasn't looking good for him. The manager asked if we would all come to the office to wait for the police who had been called already. The security guard, probably hoping to save his ass, tried to pull us both along when I told him to take his hands off of me or I was pressing charges. The manager turned around and told him to knock it off. I have no idea why Karen didn't run on hearing the police were called. She knew her story was nonsense. We waited for the police to arrive, which surprisingly took a very short time. We hadn't even sat down in the office. After reviewing security footage and speaking with witnesses, it became clear that Karen's accusations were bunk, and she was the one who had instigated the altercation. The police never even asked if I wanted to press charges. They just cuffed Karen up and led her away. I wanted them to arrest the security guard too, but some legal mumbo-jumbo was spouted, and the manager assured me he would take care of the security guard. I assume that means he is fired, but I really don't know. The cops have my name and contact in case they need me to testify. So I, an 18-year-old male, have a stepmom that hates my guts. My stepmom, can't remember her age at the moment, we'll call her C. So when I first met C, I was 12 years old, I think. And I talked in a higher pitched voice because the only voice I ever really heard was my mother's voice, and she would baby talk me all the time. So I grew up talking in that voice, not being able to control it. Whenever I would talk to C, she would not answer me or talk back until I talked like a normal person. Yeah, I get it. I was probably annoyed. A little while later, I met her kids. They were 4 and 7 at the time, if I remember correctly, and they were lovely now. I don't like kids, but I really liked being around them. I treated them as my own blood siblings. A few years later, I was diagnosed with severe depression after my dad and stepmom found out about me harming myself. When they found out, they got pissed off at me and started taking my phone away from me, and they started making me do more chores. Now, I should probably mention that when I hear certain sounds, I get really overwhelmed or have really deep emotions, depending on what the sound is. You know when people can't stand nails on a chalkboard? Well, that's what it's like for me, but with forks scratching on plates. I feel a strong feeling of anger whenever I hear it. And yes, I'm trying to get better at not getting angry. My mother had anger issues, and I guess I just got them from her. One of my stepsisters sat right in between me and her mom at dinner. She would constantly scratch her fork on her plate, and I couldn't stand it. It was like a pet peeve. I asked her to stop so many times, but she just wouldn't. Even my father would tell her to stop, but every time we asked, my stepmom would just get all pissy and say, "Don't tell her what to do. She's not your child. She can do whatever she wants, or I don't hear nothing. Get over it. You're being dramatic." And I was asking nicely, too. At one point, I said, "Stop, or I will smack the fork out of your hand." Because I got so pissed off because she never stopped even after I asked her to look straight at me and stretch her fork on her plate and say, "What's the problem?" It doesn't hurt anybody. My stepmom got pissed off and pulled me aside and told me I needed help. I went to school the next week and I was really overwhelmed because I had a lot of work to get done. I had a panic attack to the point where I got severely paranoid and started having auditory hallucinations. I went to my counselor and asked if she could call my dad because I felt like I needed to go to the mental hospital for a little while. My stepmom was getting in my head and making me scared of myself. She had me think that I was actually a really violent person. My dad took me to the hospital and told me he was proud that I asked for help for once. We spent about 23 hours in the hospital before I actually went to the mental hospital. I stayed in the mental hospital for a few weeks. Sometimes my dad would call me. On this one day when he called me, he told me that if and only if I don't get better, then me and him would have to move. I got better, got out of the mental hospital, and he drove me to a hotel because C kicked us out of our own house that my father paid to be built. He paid for almost everything inside of it as well. I stayed in the hotel for a few weeks, getting very little sleep. My dad sat down and talked to me and told me all the things C said about me to him behind my back, saying things like, "Oh, well, shh, because I'm trans and she can't accept it. Hurts herself. Why wouldn't she hurt other people?" She also told other people that I was a really violent person. She even locked me out of my own house once while I was on my period because, in her words to my mom, I don't want her kid to ruin my plans with my friends. She wasn't even at the house. So maybe I'm a dick for this part, but one day while me and my dad were still at the hotel, we went out with one of my friends in C, and her kids were there too. It was an Alice in Wonderland scavenger hunt thing. My dad told C ahead of time that I probably wasn't going to talk to her. Once we got there, I didn't talk to her the whole time we were together because she said things about me that weren't true. So why would I talk to her? Well, about a year ago, my father and C broke up. My dad came into my room one day and asked me if I cared at all that they broke up and if I missed her. I didn't say anything at first because I didn't want to be rude. He told me I could tell him the truth, so I told him that I didn't miss her and that I had bad feeling about her from the start, but I never told my dad about it because I knew being with her made him happy. He seemed happier with her than he ever was when it was just me and him. Back when I was a high school English teacher, I'm now principal, I was teaching a grade 11 class for college-bound students. One of the units was on vocational writing, so we looked at how to write technical manuals, review articles, reports, etc. In one of the lessons, we were using a well-known magazine for aficionados of motorsports. Snowmobiling and four-wheeling in particular are popular around here, as models of article writing. One of the articles was a review of a new dirt bike, and the reviewer made a comment that went something like this. While the styling is quite aggressive and they upgraded the wheels, tires, and braking system, The engine performance is rather niggardly, especially when accelerating from a stop. I don't remember the exact quote, but this is a very close approximation. We worked on reviews for a couple of days, and I didn't think anything more of it. About a week later, I got a call from the vice principal to drop by the office after school. When I went, she was in her office with a man who, from his body language, was clearly angry. I assumed she was in the middle of a meeting, so I just poked my head in and said, "Sorry to interrupt. I'll be here when you're ready." Immediately, the father shouted, "Is that him? Get him in here now." The vice principal attempted to calm him, but he interrupted, "I want him in here now." "Don't calm down, sir, me." I came into the small office and remained standing with a bemused expression. "Is there something I can help you with?" The man interrupted. "I don't appreciate what you're teaching my kid." Remember now, at this point I didn't know who he was or why I was there. All I knew was a strange man was yelling at me and the vice principal. I am slow to anger, but I can be direct and strong when people get in my face. "Who are you?" I asked, and looked at the vice principal, who had a "be careful," volatile expression on her face. "And don't give me any of your nonsense." He kept yelling, "You're not hiding from me on this." "Who are you?" I asked again. "What are you talking about?" The vice principal introduced us. "This is Mr.
Hothead.
He is Jimmy Hothead's father. Jimmy was a student in my grade 11 class. He was a nice enough boy and very easy to teach. I remained silent and continued to stare at Mr.
Hothead.
He glowered in response and turned to the vice principal. "I want him disciplined. I'll go to the school board if I have to. This is completely unacceptable, and I won't sit here and have you two try to cover it up." I looked at the vice principal and asked, "What are we talking about here?" She started to answer, but Mr. Hothead cut her off. "As if you don't know. This is what I'm talking about with you teachers always covering for each other. I'm not listening to your nonsense." "Okay then," I said, and turned and left the office. "This is unbelievable," Mr. Hothead shouted. "You get back here. I want him brought before the school board." I refused to return to the office as long as he was there, and the vice principal eventually had to threaten him with the police if he didn't leave. We sat down after he was gone, and she explained what happened. Apparently, Jimmy Hothead, sometime after the lesson on reviews, had quoted the article we had used in class, and the parents were shocked at the word niggardly. Mr. Hothead flipped and came to the school with a copy of the article, demanding that the vice principal reprimand me for being a racist. I sent him a polite note in the mail explaining that niggardly means stingy or miserly. In the context of the article, it meant that the bike didn't accelerate well. Okay, so I know this is a controversial topic, but when I was younger, I realized my sexuality developed more. I began to like girls, and I was going to church regularly with a friend. There was one lady who was very anti-gay people, and she was vocal about it. She was the type that would wish horrible things to those who were. Somehow during this time, it got out either my friend or I had liked girls. To be honest, I was young and had no clue what I was going through. She messaged me one day on Facebook threatening to find out who was the sinner. "I was a horrible kid," I said to my friend. She then called my friend out in church in front of everyone during Mass. Well, my friend's mom was ready to fight her and almost did. I felt so ashamed and I was filled with hatred, so I sought revenge. So, yeah, I was a kid. What kind of revenge could a kid do? Well, back then, Facebook and the internet had all this information such as email, etc. So I took her email cookie gal and began to sign up for every spam and malwares thing out there. It wasn't really intentional at first to give her viruses, but I played games that gave you money for shady email stuff. My nickname was Crash because I had crashed many computers this way with viruses. Anyway, I probably did like 100 emails a day because I was very addicted to gaming. I'm pretty sure to this day she had no clue who signed her up to all these things. Like I had to have sent 250 tips on weight loss diets, link alone. I did it for like 2 years before the email started going invalid. I think I signed stuff up for her address too. It makes me smile to this day when I think about it. Icing on the cake is her daughter and her daughter wife seem very happy in the most recent Facebook photos